Well, now it's the new year, I'll give you a toast. Lang may your lum rake and your kale pat bile, and may the moose ne'er leave your meal poke with a tear in its een.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good New Year. Cheers.
Well, this is a New Year party, a Hogmanay party as we call it in Scotland, and it's in its infancy. It'll go on for hours yet, in fact, until dawn. But in the meantime, I want to try and tell you about Hogmanay and how it all started. Hogmanay is traditionally associated with Scotland and the Scots, who are considered the custodians of the festival and its customs. And yet the origins of Hogmanay go way back through time to an age long before Scotland was a nation, back to megalithic man and even further. I know these are megalithic stones because you've told me.
Yes.
But obviously they're not ornamental. So what was their function?
There were several functions. One was for fixing a calendar for megalithic man. Another was that these were scenes where presumably religious festivals were set up. And as you can see from the center of the circle, there was a grave there. In many of these circles, you find graves, presumably, of notables of the time.
Fundamentally a calendar, but
Fundamentally a calendar. You see, in those days, I'm talking about 4,000 years ago, there were no calendars as we know them, but there had to be a way of keeping track of the seasons of the year, of times to sow seed, to harvest, of times to have religious rituals. And the sun in its rising every day is at a different point of the horizon. And so by tracking that, by setting up lines of stones, they could actually set up a calendar.
Now, actually, a site such as this was also the location of rituals and festivals, in particular the one that we're interested in, the Midwinter Festival.
The Midwinter one would be very important to them because when the sun was getting lower and lower in the sky, it was getting colder, maybe snow on the ground, no crops growing, birds migrating away, they began to wonder if the sun would ever return, and so they wanted to hasten it on. Now, the sun is the source of all light and heat, and so naturally they would associate it with fire, and so they would have fires as well. And it may well be that this is the origin of those ceremonies that we still have at Hogmanay, with all these fires burning and rituals, etc.
So there'd be fires about here, and there'd be what we would call a party going on.
Well, yes, I suppose you could call it a party, but it would be a very serious party because it was very, very serious to make sure that the sun would come back.
But then at some stage, man found that that calendar wasn't good enough, and then we had the Julian calendar. Now, what's the difference?
Well, the Julian calendar was brought in by Julius Caesar about 50 BC or so. and turned the calendar year into a 365-day year, except every fourth year, which was leap year, which had 366. But even this wasn't sufficient, and gradually the calendar began to keep out of step with the seasons, until by the 16th century it was about 16 days out, and so Pope Gregory brought in the Gregorian calendar. But there was still the business of the missing days. September 2nd, the day after that, was called September 14th. Now, this was a very difficult thing. People rioted because they were assured that they were losing a fortnight of their lives. But I think, more importantly, they felt they were losing a fortnight's wages.
So they thought it was a ruse by the employers to do them out of wages?
Of course. But in addition, the Greek Orthodox Church, they didn't take it up until after the First World War. And so the October Revolution is celebrated in November.
The Gregorian calendar, then, did establish the 31st of December as the end of the old year, the 1st of January, the beginning of the new year, and man took on board many of the traditions of the midwinter festival of megalithic man.
That's right. The old midwinter festival became Hogmanay, where you look back on the old year with its sadnesses and its triumphs and the people who have been taken from us, and you look forward with fear and hope to a new year with all its promises, and you require a ritual to separate the two. And I'm quite sure that megalithic man had much the same psychology towards it all.
As the wintry sun all but disappeared from the northern skies, man sought to curry favour with the life force of nature as he understood it. The sun, the fructifying sun, the source of all food and life. The symbolism of these fireballs from a Hogmanay ritual in the town of Stonehaven is unmistakable. They are clearly intended to simulate the sun and its progress through the heavens as perceived by our ancient Celtic forebears. In the Lanarkshire market town of Biggar, people reenact another age-old ritual of appeasement to the sun. On Hogmanay, the town is closed to all traffic for the night. The bonfire is lit in the town centre and becomes the focal point of the New Year festivities. There are similar type ceremonies with regional variations in different parts of Scotland. From Biggar in the south, through Fife and Morayshire, to the Isles of Orkney and Shetland. They all essentially have the same theme, what might be called the please come back sun, all is forgiven syndrome. This invocation of the sun is a significant part of many traditional Hogmanay rituals. Now there's some dispute about the word and its origins, and in the Scottish National Dictionary you will read Hogmanay, 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 and then we should listen to this. It's a word from northern France, Hogmanay, and its variants, Hoganono, Hogmanette. And these are all derived from a 16th century French word, aiguilleneuf, meaning a gift given at New Year, or simply New Year's Eve. Now we should also bear in mind the old alliances of those centuries ago and the considerable interchange between the two nations and their respective cultures. Guisin, derived from the French word guise or guise, means to dress up, or in fact to disguise yourself, particularly at Christmas festivities. However, in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, this custom was associated with Hogmanay and still persists in some areas to this day. There are accounts of guisers who went round 3 times each house in the village according to the course of the sun, whilst chanting a Hogmanay rhyme.
Oh, that was very nice.
Then there's also what I suppose we could call the Scandinavian connection. In a district of Shetland, there's the following term, Hugranoni nicht, which is their words for Hogmanay. Now, it's believed that this is more likely to be Scandinavian than French in origin. And it simply means good spirits, may good spirits approach. Hogmanay is steeped in superstition. The prevalence of fire symbolized the sun, but was also an element used to drive away the evil spirits. In a form of Scandinavian Norse, there is a word, hogbond, a dwelling place for a good fairy. In the Old Scots, there is believed to be a word derived from this, hogman, which would simply mean good spirit. This could then give us the term Hogmanay, meaning something like, please come, good spirit. Hogmanay and Hogmanay are phonetically not exactly miles apart, and the Scots, after all, have been consuming good spirits at Hogmanay for many years now. In the Shetlands, the Scandinavian dimension is maintained to this day in the festival of Uphelliar. It takes place on the last Tuesday in January and marks the end of the Yule festivals. It would, in centuries past, have represented the turn of the year. The ritual dates back to the burial ceremony of a Viking chieftain and celebrates his journey to the sacred land of Valhalla. The influences of French, Scandinavian and Celtic cultures have merged into an event which is uniquely Scottish. The actual form and traditions of Hogmanay live on in the communities and family households of Scotland. People do things without always knowing why, but everyone feels it has something to do with banishing malign spirits or bad influences and hoping in the new year that things will be better. As an island nation, the sea, both cruel and benevolent, is part of our heritage. It is therefore not surprising that our seafarers adapted some of the Hogmanay customs and gave them a nautical flavour. The captain of this boat isn't, I assure you, a drunk driver. The boat is circling, following the direction of the sun, and is a practice of fishermen from Buckie as they set sail for the first time in the new year. Some fishermen took the first fish to be hauled on board, broke its neck, and smeared their hands with its blood. This is no doubt a relic from the blood sacrifices that festooned the religious festivals of our distant ancestors. Man has always been dependent for survival on the bounty of nature, on his ability to harvest the fruits of sea and land. Many of the rites of Hogmanay appeal to the gods to help us procure and enjoy the plentiful gifts bestowed by nature.
In Scotland, bread for celebrations would traditionally have been made on the girdle. And this is the Yule bannocks, which were made in Shetland. Each member of the family had a different size according to age, and they're round, and the edges are pinched to represent the rays of the sun. And this may be a relic of the Druids' sun wheel. Special cheeses were made called kebbicks in Scotland, and it was considered very lucky if you got a slice of cheese with holes in it, because if you could see through the holes, you wouldn't lose your way in the new year. A popular hansel to take round when you were first footing was a red herring, which was a dried salted herring with a red ribbon tied round its tail. In Aberdeenshire, the northeast and the Highlands, a drink was made called sowens. And this is made with sids. Sids are the inner husk of the oat grain. And this is soaked, soured, sieved, and made into a sort of gruel, which was served in individual small wooden bowls. And in them, you would place charms. There's a sixpence in this one. And then the gruel was poured on top. Of course, at Yule time, this would have been strongly laced with whiskey. Another popular drink in the Edinburgh area was called het pint. And this was made with egg, nutmeg, and mulled ale or wine. And to get a good head on it, it was poured backwards and forwards between a jug and a tankard until you got a real good foaming head on it. Then this piping hot mixture was carried round the streets in Edinburgh with a little cup boy in attendance and used to revive frozen revellers.
In the last century, the frozen revellers weren't helped by being shorn on Hogmanay as men queued at the barber's shop for a shave and a haircut. Just as today, the shops were packed as folk stocked up for the big occasion. Pig's trotters were popular, as were the more familiar fare like sixpenny cakes of shortbread and currant loaf. Whisky was on sale at £1 a pint. By today's prices, a tippler's paradise. In 1841, the first ever New Year card appeared in Mr. Drummond's stationery shop at 133 Kirkgate, Leith, near Edinburgh. This was 2 years before the first Christmas cards appeared in the shops of London. Generally speaking, Christmas wasn't a public holiday in Scotland until something like 30 years ago. Hogmanay had evolved from different cultures, and unlike Christmas, was both secular and multi-religious. Truly international in character, it became the dominant midwinter festival. In the light of all this, isn't it ironic that the Scottish Hogmanay is portrayed, particularly in the media, in terms of a trite tartanalia? Scotland is shown as a broken down brigadoon. You know the kind of thing I mean. It's a braw bricht moonlicht nicht and nicht, and shades of Harry Lauder, and porridge in your sporn, and a caber up your kilt, and you're off to Uchtermuchty in the morning. And all that kind of nonsense has created the most peculiar, even bizarre, quasi-cultural phenomena. Like, for example, the tartan, the famous tartan tenor. This is a school of singing where the voice is much less important than possessing two good thumbs. And the tartan tenor will come out, let's say at some concert in Hogmanay or New Year's Eve, and he sticks his two thumbs in the top of his kilt, and then his feet go, and then he starts singing songs like His Granny's Healing Hame, which tells of the idyllic domestic circumstances in which the singer's grandmother lived in a most beautiful part of the Scottish Highlands. Now, the only thing wrong with that picture is that most of the Scottish tartan tenors, indeed most Scots, have grandmothers who've never lived anywhere else outside the urban sprawl of the Central Belt. Preparations for Hogmanay take many forms. These are men from Comrie in Perthshire. Young trees are wrapped in sacking, soaked in paraffin, and stored away for many months to be used in what is termed the flambeau ritual on the 31st of December. Flambeau being the French for flame.
That's very true.
That's you then, put it up now. Put it tight.
Other preparations of great importance are often left to the last minute. This is called getting in the nerdy bottle, or bottles, and not only the traditional whiskey. Plenty of beer chasers are consumed as well. The food also has to be prepared. Everybody has to make sure there is plenty of food and drink in the home, as the festivities can last for days.
Scotland is famous for baking, and it's interesting to see how the old Yule bannock compares with our more modern petticoat tail shortbread, which you'll find in every Scottish home on Hogmanay. You'll also find richer fruit mixtures like clootie dumpling, which is a sort of Christmas pudding boiled in a cloth, which is the clootie, and black bun, another rich fruit mixture encased in pastry. In the old days, if you couldn't afford all the fruit for these rich mixtures, you would have had some kind of gingerbread. And Edinburgh bakers, in fact, still make something like this called anchor stocks. In Shetland, a New Year drink was whipcle, which is made with egg yolks, sugar, and then it's laced with rum. And I must say, I think it's a great way to start the new year.
As the old year is ending, the bells are made ready to ring in and welcome the start of the new. New Year's Eve was the most distinctive, even exciting night of the year in our family, in our home, and for that matter, for the community. We started doing things which, in retrospect, we weren't certain as to why we were doing them. But certain customs, certain practices were almost sacrosanct. I can remember my mother's absolute obsession of ensuring that everything in the house was clean. So no matter what she had done the day before or even in the afternoon of Hogmanay, at about 11 o'clock at night, she would be running about to see that there wasn't any specks in the windows and that everything was spotlessly clean. Needless to say, we all had to have a bath. I can remember as a young man, may have been out, in fact was out, that night with my pals and getting in about 11:15, and she's got a hot bath already. Get your clothes off, get bathed, insisting that you change into clean clothes. And there was, I can only describe it as an obsession. You would see women in Govan, which is a working class area of Glasgow, from which I come, even scrubbing stairs at about 11:30 to make sure that everything was absolutely, spotlessly clean.
You and Jim with me? Yeah, we're going to be needing these two guitars for at least 6 hours to come. I think we're okay. Right, Andy, pour us drams, eh? How many of us? Oh, there's 5 of us so far. We're going to get first fit, I hope, quite shortly. The bells are nearly upon us. Enjoying yourself, Phil? Oh, very much. Bryn, this is your first Hogmanay as a Welshman in Scotland. Oh, that'll be the same. Are you looking forward to it? Great. Right, I'm going to fire a wee poke.
You tune to Radio Clyde and Hogmanay, and as the seconds tick away towards 12 o'clock midnight, at the close of another year, we're preparing to wish you all listening in the west of Scotland a very happy new year.
It's now officially New Year!
As the bells ring out, announcing the birth of a new year, the clamour and excitement begins. In the days when Glasgow had a thriving dockland, the many ships on the Clyde would bellow out a raucous greeting with their horns and hooters. Sadly, the decibels from this quarter have diminished with the decline of the port. Undeterred by the ravages of time or politicians, the strains of Auld Lang Syne still ring out from 1,000 parties. Windows are raised and greetings exchanged. People passing on the streets shout out a Happy New Year in Moni Odom and swap drinks from each other's bottle. In fact, there can be one hell of a noise. The noise was originally intended as another ploy to drive out the bad or redundant spirits of the old year and welcome the good ones of the new. This is the Cymru Flambeau procession, and as midnight approaches, villagers assemble in the square. On the last stroke of 12, the trees are lit to become huge torches. These are carried to the four corners of the village and were intended as a form of exorcism. The torches are eventually thrown in the nearby River Erne, and a good time is had by one and all.
Good to see you, man. Happy New Year, you and all the best.
Yeah, great.
All the best.
You're the first.
Come
You're
on.
the first here,
Very
Andy.
good. What's that, Cal?
Right. Here he is, our first food. Remember my wife, Andy? This is Phil. That's Fiona. And this is my friend from Wales, Bryn. Ragwallace.
Hey, Robin. There's a coal.
Goodies. The coal. Oh, that's important.
Shortbread.
Shortbread.
Carry it.
Carry it, right. The coal has got to obviously go on the fire to bring us luck for the next 12 months. Great. Right. Wish us luck, Cole.
Hogmanay without a first foot is like Hamlet without the prince. Inconceivable. The physical characteristics of the first foot were deemed most important. Ideally tall, dark and male. If by some mischance he was at total variance with this ideal, then folklore has it that certain remedial steps could be taken to undo the damage. On his departure, you could throw out the cat, an option of little use to a dog owner, or you could throw some salt in the fire. Mind you, most of these deficiencies were sometimes forgiven if the first foot brought something to drink, some food and a piece of coal.
Take your coats off. Get your suits out. We'll have a wee clearly.
Come fill up your glass with brandy and wine, and whatever the cost, he will pay. So be easy and free when you're drinking with me.
The Standing Stones are reputed also to fancy a drink on Hogmanay. In Orkney there is one such stone that, activated by the spirits, was believed to walk from the circle to Loch Stenness, and there to quench its thirst. Legend has it that a sailor sat on the stone some time before midnight to test this belief. Next morning he was found dead, halfway between the circle and the loch. Could this be the origin of the term to get stoned?
Here is a gale warning for shipping in the sea areas Hebrides and Malin. Winds expected storm force 9.
At 1:55 on the morning of the 1st of January 1919, the HMS Iolair was shipwrecked on rocks 20 yards offshore from the Isle of Lewis. 205 men died. All on board were servicemen returning from the war. Some were youngsters in their teens. Others were veterans, coming home for the first time since the outbreak of hostilities in 1914. The islanders had gathered in Stornoway on Hogmanay with horse-drawn carts to greet and take home their menfolk. The carts were used to bring home the dead. What had gone wrong? The official inquiry blamed the government and records that inadequate arrangements had been made for transporting the men across the Minch from the Kyle of Loch Alsh. In a damning indictment of criminal negligence, it was noted that the lifeboats and rafts available could not cope with the numbers on board. The bitter irony was that the islanders thought the distress signals were fireworks celebrating the new year. An awareness of this disaster has dimmed the traditional New Year festivities on the island ever since. In a less dramatic scale, Hogmanay for nearly everyone is tinged with a certain sadness. As the old year ends, we remember those we have lost in years gone by, and those loved ones and friends who are far from home. This sentiment is implicit in the words of Auld Lang Syne, the song which has virtually become the anthem of the world. To be with your friends and your loved ones, to have your door open for anyone that might care to drop in the early hours of the new year, to genuinely respond and embrace all that enter the threshold, and above all, the beautiful toast to absent friends. That toast to absent friends, and even the Burn Song, became a hymn to human fraternity. In other words, it wasn't just absent friends, people that you knew, but there was an element in it where you were toasting humanity, and you wanted the new year to be more peaceful, to have less strife, and there should be more decency in the world, and fraternity instead of enmity. I feel that in the Scottish Hogmanay there is a genuine warmth that's not cloyingly sentimental, but which is genuinely human, not to say humane, and wants to see in the new year strong ties between human beings that should be substantially and significantly warmer and more friendly and more fraternal than what we've had in the past. And this is part of the genuine internationalism of the festival of Hogmanay, as I know it, and indeed love it from my own experiences in Scotland. Should all their acquaintance be forgot, and never brought to mind? Should all their acquaintance be forgot, and days o' lang syne? And for all lang syne, my Joe, for all lang syne, we'll tack a couple kindness yet, for all lang syne.